Vice President Kamala Harris has $200 million new dollars in her pocket and a new plan to exploit the Republican vice presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Now, the Harris campaign claims that Vance is the most unpopular VP pick in decades, with the backlash still reverberating over his comment from years ago, labeling Harris and others, quote, childless cat ladies. CNN's Eva McKen joins us this morning with this latest news. So what's the plan here, Eva?
You know, John, Republicans argue the enthusiasm around Harris is manufactured, but the campaign providing us this morning some specific proof points, some evidence of real energy. Not only did she raise $200 million since President Biden announced he would not seek re-election a week ago, 66% of those people are donating for the first time. The campaign also telling us this morning that 170,000 people have signed up to volunteer in the last week. And they have a new target, J.D. Vance. Very rarely do campaigns make the running mate of their opponents a real focus, but they argue Donald Trump is breaking records for the worst possible VP rollout a candidate could have. Never mind uniting the country, J.D. Vance can't unite his own party. They're also dismissing Trump and Vance as weird. Take a listen to how this sounds on the campaign trail. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota out on the stump this weekend. He, of course, is one of the governors Harris is reportedly considering to be her running mate. Let's listen.
These guys are just weird. That's who they are. So it isn't much else. Don't give them the power. Don't lift these guys up like they're sometimes the heroes. Everybody in this room knows, I know it as a teacher, a bully has no self-confidence. A bully has no strength. They have nothing.
Despite all of this projected confidence, John, Harris maintains she's still the underdog in this race, telling donors at a fundraiser this weekend this is a people-powered campaign and we have momentum.
Donald Trump testing out a new attack line against Kamala Harris this weekend, calling her worse than President Biden. He said he would also potentially be worse himself when it comes to how he's going to campaign. This is less than 100 days until Election Day. Trump is expected to join Arizona GOP Senate candidate Kari Lake for a virtual rally, while his running mate, J.D. Vance, heads to Silicon Valley today. CNN's Steve Contorno is joining us now. Steve, how did Trump react to the change of Democratic opponent during this first weekend after knowing that Biden had dropped out?
Well, as you said, Sarah, he's been testing a bunch of lines, trying to see what sticks. And yes, he's been attacking her on some of the things that he was going after Biden: immigration, crime, the border, inflation. But he was also testing out different lines in front of different audiences. We saw him on Friday in front of a Christian audience claim that Vice President Harris was extreme on abortion, that she, quote, doesn't like Jewish people, which obviously she has a Jewish husband, and also that she was insufficiently pro-Israel. Then the next day, he was talking to Bitcoin enthusiasts, where he claimed that she was anti-crypto and anti-innovation. And then in Minnesota that evening, Trump said that if Harris wins, quote, the American dream is dead. So a smattering of approaches there. And meanwhile, he is under fire from Democrats for something he said to that Christian audience on Friday night about whether they need to vote for him 4 years from now. Take a listen to what he said.
Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Now, he asked the Trump campaign to clarify what exactly Trump was talking about there, and his campaign said President Trump was talking about uniting this country and bringing prosperity to every American. Senator Tom Cotton yesterday said that was obviously a joke. Meanwhile, the Harris campaign saying in a statement, when Vice President Harris says this election is about freedom, she means it. Sarah?
Steve Contorno, thank you so much for bringing us that this morning. John?
So 99 days now until the election, and the Harris campaign this morning seems to have fully embraced weird as a line of attack against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
Some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
These guys are just weird. That's who they are.
It's the weirdest thing. He'll go and like literally hug an American flag. Now, I love the flag, but I mean, it's like weird what he does.
With us now, former senior advisor for Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, Jason Osborne, and former deputy communications director and associate counsel to Vice President Kamala Harris, Rachel Palermo. Thanks so much for being with us, Rachel. Weird is an interesting argument and seems different, or does it, to existential threat to democracy. Do they fight each other?
Thank you so much for having me. Well, I think that weird might be a comment that can resonate with everyday Americans when they're looking at what we're seeing from the other side. But the reality is that Vice President Harris and the campaign is focused on putting forward their clear vision of the country. That's a vision of opportunity. It's a vision of fundamental freedoms. And so they're absolutely focused on the substance here, but they're also pointing out certain things that, frankly, have been weird.
And Jason, would you, if you're the Trump campaign, would you rather be weird than an existential threat to democracy? Is weird something that sticks, leaves a mark?
Well, I don't think weird leaves a mark compared to what we're seeing from the other side continually. You know, you want to talk about weird, let's talk about how every time that something doesn't go the Democrats' way, all of a sudden we want to change the rules. We want to get rid of the Electoral College because the popular vote in 2016 favored Hillary Clinton. We want to change the Supreme Court because it just didn't go the way that they wanted it to. I mean, I think that's more weird than anything else. And look, Donald Trump has been kind of an anomaly in politics for his entire existence in the presidential campaign world. And so I don't think this weird shtick actually works when you put it up against Kamala and some of the stuff that she's done over the last 8 years.
Jason, let me ask you this, because one of the other things we've seen, and we have new reporting this morning, is that the Harris campaign wants to continue to focus on J.D. Vance. And Harry Enton has a presentation, our senior data guru, that J.D. Vance has been an historically unpopular VP pick. So, Jason, from your perspective, is Harris smart to keep the focus on him? And how much do you think voters care about that number 2 selection? How much ground can be gained by going after that?
Well, I don't know if the vice presidential pick has really kind of swayed the voter, at least in my lifetime in presidential politics. As much as folks would like to say that it makes a difference, the top of the ticket are the ones that make the decisions. And so if we're going to start looking at vice presidential, comments that were made, when they weren't running for vice president, let's look at Kamala Harris when she talked about banning fracking as a presidential candidate and going into Pennsylvania and saying, hey, we're going to ban fracking. Absolutely. I mean, I think that if the Democrats want to focus on J.D. Vance's comments that he made running for Senate, then we welcome that argument, because there's a lot more arguments to be made when Kamala was running for president and now she's having to run on the Biden ticket, basically.
So Rachel, what does the Harris campaign get out of focusing on J.D. Vance?
Well, I think that the campaign is focusing on J.D. Vance, but the focus of this campaign is no doubt Donald Trump. The contrast could not be more clear between Vice President Harris and Donald Trump. She's a career prosecutor. He's a convicted felon. She has a vision for this country to take us forward, not backwards, and he wants to bring us backwards. And so, of course, the campaign is talking about J.D. Vance, but Donald Trump is the focus here because his vision for this country and where he wants to go would be devastating.
But why then, and we have reporting, which I believe, frankly, this morning, does the Harris campaign want to highlight the Vance pick, Rachel?
Well, the Vice President Harris has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years. She ran with President Biden as his vice president when they were elected by 81 million Americans during the 2020 election. And so, of course, the vice president in the campaign, they're not going to ignore the vice presidential pick, and there's a lot of material there to focus on. And so while the focus is Donald Trump, of course, they're going to point to the fact that J.D. Vance has issues as well.
So Jason, Politico in their playbook, which I like to quote because they do a really nice job, their headline this morning is "After the Sugar High" for Vice President Harris, suggesting that she's experienced quite a week. I mean, it's been now 7 full days. We're on our first, full new week of her having a presidential campaign, and it's been a tight, effective week where she's gained ground on many fronts. But it says that the Harris campaign is aware this can't last forever. So I want you to flip around and put yourself in their shoes. How would you get the sugar high to last?
Well, I mean, I think they have done, there's no question that the Harris campaign has done a very good job of putting her out there and kind of putting to rest some of the, issues that were involved with Joe Biden still being at the top of the ticket. I think there was, we spent a few weeks after the debate amongst all the political pundits and on TV here talking about what if and who should the nominee be for the Democrats. And so they did a good job. You have to give them credit for coalescing behind Kamala Harris. I think I've said it on this show and a few others that there's no doubt that she should be the nominee instead of Joe Biden if he dropped out. And so I think they have to keep pushing forward on that message. I think focus on Donald Trump and the difference between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, although I'm on the Donald Trump side of things, but don't focus on J.D. Vance. And obviously the Republicans are going to kind of look at who the vice presidential pick would be for her as well. Other than that, I mean, continue doing what they're doing. And I think we still win at the end of the day, but that's the way to win this race.
Jason Osborne, great to see you. Rachel Perumal, nice to have you on. Really appreciate it.